At the entrance of the Silver Dragon dungeon, two guards stand watch, their expressions firm. Suddenly, the sound of approaching footsteps fills the air. One of them quickly takes notice and alerts the other. In unison, they recognize the one approaching. It is none other than the Silver Dragon Queen. Without hesitation, they straighten up and offer a respectful salute as she draws near. Without wasting a moment, she instructs them to leave, making it clear that she wishes to handle matters alone. There is no hesitation in their response. Both guards acknowledge her command and step outside, leaving her to face the prisoner within the dark and cold dungeon. As she moves inside, the sight before her is nothing short of intriguing. The great dragon-slaying hero, the one who once stood as a formidable warrior, is now bound in chains. She wastes no time in taunting him, her words dripping with satisfaction. She wants to know how it feels to be reduced to a mere prisoner of the Dragon Clan. However, there is no fear in his eyes, no trace of submission. His response is simple. He asks her to end his life. But that is far too easy, far too merciful. She refuses. Instead, she takes a moment to observe him, noting his strong features. Then, without warning, she drags her nails across his face, leaving behind a fresh wound. The injury only adds to the many marks of battle he already bears, and she remarks on how it completes his look. Yet there is no sign of pain in his expression, only defiance. He tells her to stop humiliating him, to do whatever she plans to do without delay. But she is in no rush. With amusement in her voice, she reminds him that if not for being framed, he would have never found himself in this position. Then, as if offering a lifeline, she suggests that he abandon his past and join the Silver Dragon clan, but his response is sharp and filled with disdain. He does not even consider it an offer worth his time. The words he speaks are enough to ignite her anger. Without hesitation, she swings her tail and sends him crashing against the dungeon wall. A heavy impact follows, and a cough escapes his lips as he struggles to recover. Yet, she is not done. She moves toward him swiftly and strikes his stomach, her fury evident. With her foot pressing down on him, she reminds him of his reality. Once a celebrated hero, he is now nothing more than a defeated man. There is no chance of reclaiming his former glory. Moreover, she tells him that, had he made different choices, perhaps his descendants could have lived in wealth and honor. But that is nothing more than a dream, for he has no heir to carry on his legacy. Despite everything, he does not break. Instead, he utters a name: Roswise, the White Dragon Queen. His voice carries a warning, urging her not to underestimate humans. Before she can react, she uses her tail to wrap around his neck, lifting him with ease. His body struggles against the hold, a strained sound escaping his throat. She watches him with amusement, calling him stubborn. Then, just as he seems to be on the brink of giving in, he speaks again, addressing her directly. She interrupts, assuming he is finally ready to beg for mercy. But to her surprise, his words take an unexpected turn. With unwavering confidence, he tells her that from the very beginning, she made two critical mistakes. Her curiosity is piqued, and she listens as he reveals them. The first mistake, he says, was choosing to be alone with the most powerful dragon slayer ever trained. The second, and perhaps the most dangerous, was tasting his blood. The moment those words leave his lips, a sudden change takes place. His eyes, once filled with defiance, glow red. But that is not all. Something unexpected happens. The Silver Dragon Queen's eyes also shift, taking on the same crimson hue. And just like that, the atmosphere in the dungeon changes completely. Previously, we saw a tense moment unfold between the Silver Dragon Queen and Leon, the Dragon Slayer. After releasing her tail from his neck, he collapses to the ground. As she looks at him, something feels off. The heat, the strange sensation in her body, it doesn't make sense. Then, a sudden realization strikes her. However, before she can process it, her body gives in, and she drops to the ground. A wave of confusion washes over her as she struggles to understand what's happening. Leon stands in front of her, his presence commanding as he speaks with confidence. He tells her that she will soon live in pain, a suffering brought upon her by the soul, and it will last a lifetime. But just when we think she might lash out in anger, she does something completely unexpected. Without hesitation, she dashes toward him, her arms outstretched. And in the most shocking turn of events, she presses herself against him, embracing him tightly. The warmth of her body against his chest catches him off guard. His thoughts race. What is happening? Could she actually be feeling aroused? Before he can even process the situation, she closes the distance and kisses him. His eyes widen in shock, unable to believe what just happened. An hour later, the scene shifts to the dungeon, where chaos is evident. Clothes are scattered randomly across the floor. The Silver Dragon Queen, visibly shaken, tries to regain her composure. Covering herself with her hands, she struggles to find the words to speak. Finally, she begins to say something, but hesitation takes over. She glances at Leon, her expression filled with disbelief. Then, frustration takes over as she demands an explanation. What did he do to her? Leon, however, remains composed. He reveals the truth, a forbidden technique known as the blood curse. It is a spell that can only be used once in a lifetime. If his blood is consumed, a soul connection is formed, binding them in an irreversible way. And the real consequence? When he dies, the curse will plunge her into endless pain. But the Silver Dragon Queen isn't convinced. If the curse only activates upon his death, then what just happened? Why did she feel that way? Leon cuts her off, his voice steady. He admits that he, too, thought the pain would only manifest after his passing. However, he never expected the curse to have a side effect, one that would make her react this way. But before he can finish his sentence, she interrupts, yelling at him to be quiet. Yet, Leon doesn't stop there. He reminds her of a crucial fact: dragons are monogamous by nature. This means that once bound, they cannot take another mate. With a smirk, he spells out the consequences. Once he is gone, she will be left alone, unable to find a new partner, unable to produce offspring, and worst of all, unable to explain what happened to the rest of the dragon clan. The impact of this spell goes far beyond what even he anticipated. The realization hits her hard. Anger bubbles up inside her, and she looks at him with fury in her eyes. But he isn't done yet. He recalls how she once said he would never have a successor. Now, the same fate has been placed upon her. No dragon heir. No future. The weight of his words fuels her rage, and she charges at him, raising her hand to strike. But just as she is about to land the blow, he taunts her further. If she truly wants to end his life, she doesn't need to do it herself. His death is already inevitable. Instead, he tells her to live on, carrying this hatred, this pain, for the rest of her life. That is the true curse he has placed upon her as a human. As she processes his words, she hurriedly puts her clothes back on, standing over him. And in the next moment, Leon lies still on the ground, his eyes closed, lifeless. But the story doesn't end here. Just when we think it's over, something unexpected happens. A strange sign appears on his chest, glowing ominously. What could this mean? Is it truly the end for Leon, or is there something even greater at play? One thing is certain: the curse has only just begun. Leon Cosmode, once known as the strongest dragon-slaying hero, has faced countless battles, claimed victories for the Empire, and earned a reputation that made him a legend. He was only 5 when he took down a vicious dog with his bare hands, catching the attention of a passing dragon slayer. That moment changed his life, leading him to train as an apprentice. By 10, he was studying at the Imperial Dragon Slayers Academy, and by 14, he had already made history as the youngest and most powerful graduate. At 15, he stepped onto the battlefield, uniliving dragons and reclaiming land for the Empire. His name alone struck fear into the hearts of enemies. However, the tides turned when he was captured by a dragon clan. 2 years have passed since that moment, and everything is about to change. Suddenly, Leon jolts awake, gasping for air. His body tenses, and confusion fills his mind. He looks around, trying to make sense of his surroundings. This isn't a battlefield. This isn't a prison cell. It's a room, a quiet, unfamiliar room. Just as he starts piecing things together, the door creaks open, and a little girl stands at the entrance. She looks at him with bright, curious eyes and speaks as if she has been waiting for this moment. He stares at her, completely frozen. His mind races, trying to process what is happening. For someone who has faced dragons head-on without fear, this moment feels strangely overwhelming. The child's face is so innocent, so pure, and in his mind, he can only think of one thing: she is unbelievably adorable. He takes a deep breath, rubbing his face as reality settles in. A wild thought crosses his mind, and he decides to say it out loud. Surely, after all the battles he has fought, all the contributions he has made to mankind, this must be his reward. He must have reached heaven. And this little girl? She must be an angel. Convinced of this, he kneels to her level, his expression filled with admiration. Curious, she tilts her head and asks what an angel is. He chuckles, fascinated by her innocence. He asks for her name, and she excitedly responds, Muon. He repeats the name, laughing heartily as if he has just heard the most wonderful thing. However, something about her appearance catches his attention. Her hair is a mix of black and white, an unusual sight for an angel. Before he can dwell on it, she explains that her name means the moon. His thoughts spiral again. If she has a name, then surely she must have a mother. Angels have mothers too? He introduces himself, stating his name with the same pride he once carried on the battlefield. To his surprise, she already knows. She even knows the meaning of his name, Lion. This revelation startles him. How does she know this? Muon casually mentions that her mother told her. And just like that, everything shifts. Leon's body stiffens, and his eyes widen. His voice catches in his throat as he stammers, asking who her mother is. The moment she answers, Rossweiss, his entire world turns upside down. Shock washes over him. The name echoes in his mind. Rossweiss. The Silver Dragon Queen. The very name he never expected to hear in this situation. His mind struggles to connect the dots, yet the truth stares him right in the face. He points to himself, as if seeking confirmation, and Muon, without hesitation, delivers the final blow: he is her father. The weight of those words hits him like a tidal wave. His hands fly to his head as the realization sinks in. This is his child. His and Rossweiss. Just as he is trying to process it all, Muon suddenly looks away and calls out to someone. His heart pounds as he follows her gaze. Standing there is Rossweiss herself, her presence as strong as ever. Muon runs toward her, wrapping her little arms around her mother, exclaiming that her father is finally awake. The Dragon Queen responds calmly, "Yeah, I know." Leon finally wakes up, and she is the first to greet him. Meanwhile, Muon, who has been visiting with her mother every day, looks up and points out how happy her mother must be now that he is awake. Her mother confirms it, but in Leon's mind, Leon can't help but think that only a fool would believe that. Then, she gently pats her daughter's head and tells her to go play outside, explaining that she has something important to discuss with him. Without hesitation, Muon obeys and leaves the room. Now that they are alone, Leon turns to our female lead character and asks if Muon is really his daughter. Without missing a beat, she responds that she is, emphasizing that the child is their biological daughter. However, he isn't convinced. He questions why she chose to give birth to the child despite hating him. More importantly, why did she even bother to save him? But instead of answering directly, she reminds him that he has been asleep for 2 years. Letting go of what happened back then is not something she can simply do. The conversation takes a sharp turn when she adds that they are too different and can never coexist. If things were any other way, she would have never touched him. This statement clearly gets to him, and he immediately reacts, asking if being close to him is that unbearable. Without hesitation, she confirms it. However, just as the tension between them grows stronger, she suddenly uses her tail to pull his leg, causing him to lose his balance and fall back onto the bed. Without missing a beat, she climbs on top of him. Completely caught off guard, he demands to know what she is planning to do. Then, without warning, she rips off his shirt and leans in closer. Just when it seems like things are taking an unexpected turn, a blue light begins to glow from her hand. She declares that she wants to carve her own dragon pattern onto him. Panic sets in, and he immediately tells her to stop. However, she remains unfazed, explaining that this mark will become his shame. From now on, he will be her prisoner and will never be able to leave her. Before he can resist any further, she places the glowing light on his chest, making it clear that once humans see the dragon tattoo on his body, they will question everything. Will they still see him as the great dragon-slaying hero, or will they label him as a traitor who surrendered to the dragon clan? As he struggles with the weight of her words, she continues, pointing out that dragons have always had a different way of understanding revenge. Their actions often go beyond what humans can comprehend. And now, her plan is simple. She wants him to live in shame for the rest of his life, to be humiliated by her forever. As the tattoo slowly appears on his chest, the reality of the situation begins to sink in. For Rossweiss, this is more than just marking him with a symbol, it is the ultimate revenge. Making Leon, the greatest dragon slayer in human history, a servant of the dragon clan is a victory unlike any other. As if sealing her victory, she moves even closer, placing her hand on his cheek and looking into his eyes. The moment is intense, and we can see the full weight of her vengeance. Now, she is ready to begin what she has planned all along. At Silver Dragon Castle, two maids walk through the hallway, engaged in conversation. One of them notes how the queen seems to be in a good mood today. In response, the other shares a surprising piece of information: her husband has woken up. At this moment, Leon, who is hiding behind a pavement, overhears their words, and the realization sinks in. That loud dragon actually announced to the public that he was her husband. If only they knew how terrifying that mother dragon truly is. As he recalls a past memory, the scene shifts to a time when the Silver Dragon Queen ordered him to move faster. That entire day and night, she held him tightly, and the pain still lingers. His waist nearly broke from the experience. Clenching his fists and gritting his teeth, he makes a silent vow: he will never stay here and become her plaything. Observing from afar, he notices dragon guards stationed in front of an exit. For dragon guardians stand beside them, making an escape seem impossible. He touches his chin, arms crossed, as another thought crosses his mind. Why are there so few guards at the castle today? It's completely different from when he first arrived 2 years ago. The silence is unsettling, something feels strange. Just as he wonders about it, his eyes land on a hole. Moving closer, he inspects it, curiosity filling his mind. How did this hole get here? Could it be a trap? But there's no time to hesitate. He places his hands on his head, shaking off the doubts. It doesn't matter, he has to leave no matter what. Even if it's a trap, he will force his way through. Without another thought, he enters. As he makes his way through, one final thought lingers: goodbye, perverted mother dragon. As for Mwen, though she is truly adorable, she will have to stay behind for now. Emerging from the hole, he is unaware that his daughter, Mayan, watches him from behind. She points towards him, excitement clear in her voice as she calls for her mother's attention. The queen, who is lying down, acknowledges the scene. Nguyen expresses her amazement, calling it cool, but then she wonders when her mother will go and bring him back. The queen gently corrects her. Using the word fishing is too rude. Instead, she suggests saying they will catch him back. Meanwhile, Leon is running, determined to escape. After climbing over several mountains, he finally sees it, the border of human territory. The relief washes over him as he reassures himself that after running this far, surely, the female dragon won't catch up. However, just as he thinks he is safe, he turns his head and sees our female-led character flying in the sky, heading straight for him. His face drops as he realizes what is happening. Without a second thought, he tries to run, but it is already too late. Descending from the sky, she lands gracefully in front of him, blocking his path. There's no escaping now. With an amused expression, she comments on how much he enjoys this game. Watching his reaction, satisfaction fills her. Just when we think he has managed to escape, Rosette appears, her eyes sharp with suspicion. She questions how everything went so smoothly, pointing out that someone must have helped him by distracting the guards and leaving an open path for him. There's no way he pulled this off alone, but Leon, standing his ground, admits that even if he knew it was a trap, he had no other choice. He just didn't expect her to catch up so fast. Without wasting time, she asks what he thinks will happen if he returns to human territory now. The mark on his chest is proof that he belongs to her. Would the humans still see him as one of them? He doesn't hesitate to respond, saying that he will start over as an unmarried person. Anything is better than suffering under her control. Her expression darkens as she spreads her wings, clearly irritated. She demands to know why he refuses to appreciate her kindness. Before he can react, she grabs him and soars into the sky. His startled cries fill the air as he struggles in her grip, demanding to be let go and shouting at her, calling her a dragon. She simply replies that since he wants to go back so badly, she will help him. 3 hours pass, and we find them near the border of the human empire. She releases him without warning, sending him crashing onto the ground. A loud yell escapes his lips as he lands hard, quickly placing a hand on his forehead, realizing that it's burning. His gaze shifts, and in the distance, he spots the glow of a city. His heart races as he wonders if it's truly a human town. The Silver Dragon Queen, now back in her human form, confirms it. That is indeed the human empire. However, she challenges him, asking if he really thinks stepping over that border will return him to the life he once knew. Even though it seems so close, he can never go back. At that moment, the tattoo on his chest reacts, sending a heat through his body. The sensation is intense, growing stronger with every second. Rosette casually mentions that she forgot to explain something when one of the two people marked by the dragon's seal desires the other. The mark responds. Right now, his entire body is burning, making it impossible to resist the urge. His frustration is clear as he struggles against the overwhelming sensation. He asks if she planned this, and without hesitation, she confirms it. She brought him here for a reason, to make him understand shame. Standing so close to the world he once called home, he is now trapped by her mark, unable to return. But Leon refuses to be broken. Even as she presses a hand against his chest, he grabs her wrist, his determination unshaken. He declares that he will wait for the right moment, and when it comes, he will make her pay for everything she has done to him. For the first time, Ross Weiss looks surprised. There's a brief silence before she acknowledges his words, telling him she will be waiting, whether he returns to her alive or not. Taking a step closer, she locks eyes with him as the tension in the air lingers. Near the Empire border city, we see the Silver Dragon Queen sitting down with a satisfied smile. She looks at Leon, who is lying shirtless on the ground, and expresses how pleased she is with his performance just now. As if that wasn't enough, she moves closer, placing a finger on his chest, and offers to bring him here every month to visit his hometown. However, he immediately sits up, making it clear that he knows exactly what she is thinking. He accuses her of having her head in the clouds, planning how she is going to drain him. In response, she admits that he has seen through her. Without wasting time, she rises to her feet, spreading her wings, and announces that it is time to leave because their daughter is waiting at home. He puts on his shirt but refuses to be treated like prey. As a dragon slayer, he insists that he can walk on his own and starts moving forward, leaving her behind. Watching him go, she reminds him that the journey to the Silver Castle takes at least 3 hours by flight, while a human walking would need 10 days or even half a month. Nonetheless, he doesn't seem bothered. He keeps walking and confidently states that humans have great endurance. Amused, she smiles and expresses curiosity about how long he will last. As time passes, he continues walking through the bush, breathing heavily. Eventually, she appears behind him with her arms folded, watching closely. She comments on his struggle and is about to ask if he needs help, but before she can finish, he quickly denies being tired. He questions why she would think otherwise, acting as if he isn't struggling. She, however, simply points out that the only thing strong about him is his mouth. Just when we think the scene is settling, they both suddenly turn in the same direction, sensing something. His mind races as he spots a group of men on horses. His heart pounds as he recognizes them, the Dragon Slayer army. Excitement floods through him at the thought that these men might help him escape from the dragon beside him. However, standing behind him, Ross Weiss frowns, and he quickly realizes the problem. If he calls for help, she will not hesitate to get rid of them. One of the men, noticing something unusual, signals the rest to stop. He observes the pair and asks if they are lost. Without hesitation, Leon responds, making it seem as though they are simply hanging out. A man approaches him, placing a hand on his head as he speaks. He seems to be thinking deeply, realizing that he cannot drag innocent people into this mess. Without wasting any time, he dismounts his horse and steps closer. He warns that the forest is not a safe place, filled with dangerous creatures lurking in the shadows. Then, in a casual yet authoritative manner, he offers to give Leon a ride. Moving even closer, he introduces himself as Walker, the captain of the 47th Squadron of the Imperial Dragon Slayer Army. Leon listens carefully but stays on guard. Politely, he declines the offer, explaining that they have received self-defense training and can protect themselves. However, his thoughts betray his words. He silently hopes that Walker will not come any closer. Just then, Walker takes a good look at Leon and pauses. There's a flicker of recognition in his eyes as he wonders if they have met before. At that moment, Rosweiss, who has been standing nearby, reacts strongly. Her expression shifts, and something about her changes. He notices immediately, realizing that she is about to let loose. A strange glow begins to form around her hands, and he knows this is trouble. Without hesitation, he grabs her hand and pulls her toward him, making her lean against him in an attempt to calm her down. Thinking quickly, he tells Walker that he must be mistaken. His face is quite common, and even his wife often confuses him for someone else. Then, in a low voice, he whispers to Rosweiss, promising to return with her if she helps get rid of them first. As if on cue, she immediately plays along, wrapping her arms around him. Walker watches this interaction and laughs. Finding the scene amusing, he decides not to interfere. He climbs back onto his horse, signaling to his men that it is time to leave. Soon, the sound of hooves fades into the distance as they ride away. Once they are gone, she wastes no time turning to Leon. With a firm look, she demands to know if he has had enough fun. The moment she steps away, he flinches and lets out a surprised yelp. She doesn't stop there. She acknowledges that he made the right choice by not asking for their help, but reminds him that just because they have children together, it does not mean that she is his wife. As she speaks, she places a hand on his chest, but before he can respond, he firmly states that he never considered himself her husband. She immediately turns away, folding her arms, and declares that they still have a long journey ahead. However, just as they are about to move, Leon suddenly winces in pain. He grips his hand, and before anyone can react, he collapses onto the ground. Rosweiss turns back, looking down at him and noting how fragile he is. Without hesitation, she shifts back into her dragon form, effortlessly picks him up with her mouth, and tosses him onto her back. As she takes off into the sky, flying with Leon unconscious on her back, she remarks that, for now, she will take this as his plea for mercy. At the Silver Dragon Castle, Leon slowly wakes up from his sleep. The moment his eyes open, Moen's face pops right in front of him, excitement shining in her gaze as she announces that he is finally awake. Sitting up, he places a hand on his head, confusion settling in as he wonders how he ended up back at the castle. Without hesitation, the little girl tells him that it was their mother who brought him back. Realization dawns on him, and he mutters in frustration, knowing that Rosweiss has finally caught him like prey. As he processes the situation, his eyes fall on the bandage wrapped around his hand. Just as he is about to question it, she quickly speaks up, proudly declaring that she is the one who bandaged his wound. Looking at her, a thought crosses his mind. A dragonologist once said that dragons are a ferocious race, raised in violence and bloodshed from childhood. Yet, despite having clear dragon traits, the little girl has no hostility toward him. Instead, she treats him as her father. Could it be because she is a human-dragon hybrid? With a gentle smile, he pats her head and tells her she did a great job. Then, leaning in, he remarks on how cute she is, but playfully warns her not to become like her mother when she grows up. She tilts her head in confusion, but before anything else can be said, Rosweiss' voice suddenly cuts through the moment from the doorway. Caught off guard, he stiffens as she questions what is so wrong about being like her. He quickly turns away, brushing it off as nothing. Just then, Moen lifts his bandaged hand and proudly shows it to Rosweiss, explaining that she did it exactly as instructed. Without much reaction, she simply acknowledges that it was something her daughter should do, to which the little girl immediately agrees. Watching this interaction, he sighs internally. To him, she is a strict mother. Gently patting her head again, he suggests a game. She should run and hide in the garden while he counts to 100, and then he will come to find her. Her face lights up with excitement as she eagerly asks if he really means it. Placing a hand on his chest, he reassures her that he is not like her mother and encourages her to go quickly. Without wasting another second, he starts counting. She squeals in delight and dashes away, laughing as she begs him not to count too fast. His voice follows her as he continues counting, his pace steady. Soon, she disappears through the door, leaving him alone with her mother. Without hesitation, he turns to her and calls for her attention. She responds casually, acting as if nothing is unusual. Standing up from the bed, he looks at her and asks if she is being too hard on their daughter. Without missing a beat, she responds firmly. Dragons have always been raised this way. Only through strict discipline from a young age can they grow to be strong warriors. She states this with confidence as she calmly takes a seat on the bed. He points out that Moen is not completely a dragon, adding that she is quite cute. He then asks if she can transform into something else. However, she immediately responds that she is, in fact, a dragon and takes offense at being called cute, as it is an insulting term for a dragon. Nonetheless, he insists that she is pretty cute as well. Without hesitation, she glares at him, moves swiftly toward him, and grabs his shirt. She warns him not to overstep his boundaries, stating that he is merely someone for her to release her frustrations on. Without saying a word, he simply looks at her. Seeing this, she acknowledges his understanding and declares herself as the queen of the Silver Dragon clan. Since she has numerous government duties to handle, she assigns him the task of looking after the children. Bringing her fist closer to his ear, she mentions that one of the kids has taken a liking to him. He then steps outside, folding his arms as he walks through the garden. He mutters to himself about how the Dragon Queen is too busy with her responsibilities, and somehow, it seems like dragon slayers are the ones expected to care for children. Suddenly, he notices a shadow of a little girl as he turns his head. Surprised, he wonders if he is seeing things. However, when he looks closely, he recognizes Moen from a distance. He quickly realizes that she is being too naive, thinking she can stay hidden behind him without being noticed. Without hesitation, he turns around and points in her direction, calling out that he has found her. As he looks at her face, he begins to wonder if she is upset. Placing a hand on his head, he apologizes for making her wait. However, before he can finish speaking, she suddenly starts running away. Confused, he immediately chases after her, asking why she is running. He continues pursuing her but eventually loses track of her. Standing still, he glances around and notes that she just passed through that area moments ago. As he stands there, he reflects on how unpredictable a child's mood can be. It is no surprise that he was given the responsibility of looking after the baby. With this thought in mind, he places his hand on his head once more. Out of nowhere, Moen jumps from behind and wraps her arms around him, laughing as she declares that she has caught him. He expresses his confusion, pointing out that she had just run past him. However, she confidently states that he could not find her, so she had to come looking for him instead. At this moment, he starts doubting himself, wondering if he was mistaken. Just as he processes this, she grabs his hand and starts pulling him forward, insisting that she has something to show him. Without much thought, he follows along. Unbeknownst to them, another child, identical to Moen, stands quietly behind them, watching them as they run ahead. Leon sits watching his daughter as she colors on a piece of paper, his eyes filled with warmth. In his mind, he reflects on how good it feels to have a daughter, as if his soul is finally healed. He tells himself that sooner or later, he will help her escape from the clutches of the mother dragon. Just then, she rushes to him, excitement shining in her eyes as she holds up a drawing. She proudly announces that she has drawn a family portrait. Reaching out to take the paper, he praises her, saying she is truly worthy of being his daughter. However, as he looks at the drawing, he suddenly stops. The image before him shows himself, the Silver Dragon Queen, and two versions of Muon. Confused, he turns the paper around, pointing at the second figure of his daughter. He asks why there are two of her in the picture. Without hesitation, she responds that it is her sister. Shock washes over him, leaving his mouth slightly open. He repeats her words, realizing that he has not just one daughter but two. As this realization sinks in, he places a hand on his head, recalling the child he saw in the garden earlier. He had called her by the wrong name, and now it all makes sense. No wonder she was upset. She, however, assures him that her sister was not angry but only a little shy. Thoughtfully, he puts a hand on his chin, agreeing that since they have not met often, it is natural for them to be unfamiliar with each other. Yet, as he glances toward the castle, frustration grows within him. He blames the Silver Dragon Queen for hiding this child from him. Determined to get answers, he heads straight to her study. Storming into the room, he calls out her name with clear irritation. She, however, remains calm, opening a letter in her hands. Moving closer, he tells her that Muon has gone to play with her sister and accuses her of being too good at keeping secrets. He demands to know when she planned to tell him about his eldest daughter. Unbothered, she points out that he already knows now. Sarcasm laces his tone as he thanks her for all the hard work of giving birth to two children instead of one. Placing a hand on his head, he declares that when he returns to the Empire, he will make sure her name is written in the family tree. Her expression darkens as she frowns and crosses her arms. She then challenges him, asking if he even understands why she never mentioned their eldest daughter to him. Folding his arms as well, he questions her reasoning, convinced that she is simply jealous of his bond with Muon and deliberately keeping the other child away from him. Instead of denying it, she asks if he is that eager to see their other daughter. He responds immediately, stating that every father would want to meet his child. Unlike her, he is not cold and distant. He wants to build a proper relationship with both of his daughters. Resting on the table, she tells him not to regret it. We see our male lead character in the kitchen. He now holds a knife in his hand, lost in thought about everything he has just learned. In the kitchen, our male lead is busy chopping a carrot, a small smile on his face. As he prepares the meal, he tells himself that this dish will help him get closer to his eldest daughter. Cooking has always been something he enjoys, and he remembers making this cream stew often in his team. Everyone who tasted it said it was delicious, and its sweet flavor makes it perfect for children. As he stirs the pot, he takes a spoonful to taste, nodding in approval. His cooking skills are still as good as ever. This meal, he thinks, will surely win Noah over. In his mind, he can already imagine her saying that she loves the food he makes the most. Outside the window, two maids watch him, whispering about how the prince has just recovered from a serious illness, yet he still cooks for his family. They admire how much he cares. Just then, their attention shifts as Rosweiss arrives with her two daughters. The maids quickly bow in respect, expressing their gratitude, but the queen tells them to rest for the night instead of waiting for them at dinner. Grateful, they accept her kindness. Inside the kitchen, Rosweiss and her daughters find Leon just as he finishes. He greets them warmly, glad they arrived at the perfect time. Muon, excited by the smell, rushes toward him, asking about the dish. He explains that he made stew and steak just for them since he knows how much they love meat. However, his attention drifts to Noah, who stands a little further away, looking elsewhere. This isn't how he imagined things would go. He expected her to be happy or at least curious. Instead, she seems distant. He starts to suspect that Rosweiss had planned this all along, making sure he hadn't met Noah before now. The queen finally speaks, telling Noah to introduce herself properly. The little girl obeys, walking up to him and stating her name with confidence. She is Noah Melkvi, the eldest daughter of the Silver Dragon Queen, and she is 1 year and 2 months old. Unlike human children, baby dragons grow much faster. Down to her height, introducing himself in return. He stretches out his hand, hoping to leave a good first impression. This is the next step in getting closer to her. But instead of responding with warmth, the little girl simply looks at him and gives a short reply. The coldness in her voice surprises him. Why does she seem so distant? Does she hold some kind of grudge against him? Before he can dwell on it too much, Moen whispers to her sister, asking her to talk more so she doesn't embarrass their father. Noah, however, folds her arms and gives an unexpected response. To her, Leon looks too weak to be their father. Her words hit him like a sharp blade to the chest. Holding his heart, he wonders how things went wrong so quickly. This is only the beginning of his journey as a father, and already, he faces his first real challenge. At the family dinner table, what should be a moment of warmth and togetherness becomes a tense scene for Leon. Sitting with Rosweiss and their daughters, he watches as Muen turns to her sister for help cutting her food. A single thought runs through his mind: these two are his children. They look alike, yet their personalities couldn't be more different. One glance at Noah is enough to confirm that she takes after her mother. Curious, he asks Noah if she likes the food. Without hesitation, she responds with a single word: disgusting. The comment cuts straight through his chest, leaving him momentarily stunned. As if enjoying his suffering, her mother covers her mouth and laughs. Meanwhile, Muen, noticing her mother's amusement, questions why she seems so happy. Without missing a beat, the Silver Dragon Queen explains that she's simply pleased to see Leon reunited with their family. As she rests a hand on her cheek, she turns to him with a smile and asks why he isn't smiling too. Forcing a laugh, he assures them that, of course, he is happy. Muen, seemingly convinced, asks if he can have dinner with them every day. At that moment, an unspoken battle begins in his mind. The thought of sharing meals with Rosweiss daily is unbearable, but before he can respond, Noah abruptly says no. Muen, taken aback, questions why. Without pausing, Noah continues eating and announces her desire to study at the Young Dragons Department of St. Hel's Academy. Her mother, on hearing this, immediately points out that the Academy's Young Dragon Department is designed for children around 4 or 5 years old. She questions why her daughter is in such a hurry to enroll. Without hesitation, the little girl declares that her goal is to defeat more dragon slayers. The words catch him off guard, making him cough. He quickly grabs a napkin to wipe his mouth while his thoughts race. It becomes painfully clear that his own daughter wants to defeat him. Trying to reason with her, he reminds her that dragon slayers are brave warriors and that she is still young, too young to be thinking about such things. However, Noah refuses to accept this, insisting that she shouldn't be treated like a child. The irony of her words almost makes him scream internally, because she is, in fact, a child. Rosweiss, watching the exchange with her arms folded, chimes in with surprising support for Noah's idea. She argues that the sooner her daughter learns these skills, the sooner she can fight dragon slayers. Then, she pointedly turns to Leon, almost challenging him. Does he have a reason to stop her from going to school? As the tension at the table grows, he clenches his teeth. If he continues to oppose this, his daughter will only resent him more. With no other choice, he realizes that he must handle this carefully. Instead of arguing, he decides that he will have to change her mind subtly. He suddenly speaks up, saying no more, before putting food into his mouth. But even as he eats, his mind races with realization. Now, he finally understands Rosweiss' true intention. She isn't just sitting there innocently, she's using Noah to mentally attack him throughout this dinner. And the more he thinks about it, the angrier he becomes. Deep inside, he swears to himself that she won't get away with it. Just wait, he thinks. She's going to pay for this later. The Silver Dragon Queen, on the other hand, seems completely unbothered. Instead, she turns to her daughter and tells her that since her father agrees, the decision is final. The entrance test for St. Hel's Academy will take place in a month, and during this time, her father will help her prepare. Without hesitation, she clenches her fists and agrees, showing her determination. And just like that, the family dinner comes to an end. As the plates sit untouched on the table, Muen suddenly pats her stomach, claiming that it's round. Noah, amused, reaches out and touches it. Meanwhile, he turns his attention to their mother, pointing at the plates and reminding her that they haven't been cleaned yet. However, she simply tells him to let the servants handle it. But he doesn't back down so easily. Instead, he places a hand on her shoulder and insists that after dinner, the couple should clean up together. That, he says, is the proper way to end a family meal. Then, leaning in slightly, he lowers his voice, asking if she wants to create a harmonious family atmosphere in front of the children, even if it's all just for show. At that moment, she turns to look at the children before finally agreeing. But before anything else happens, Nguyen suddenly jumps up, announcing that she wants to help as well. However, before she can take another step, Noah grabs her hand and pulls her away, leaving her confused as she asks where they are going. Minutes later, the plates are cleaned, but the tension in the air is far from gone. Rosweiss turns around and questions Leon about when he plans to help. But instead of answering directly, he sits comfortably with his arms folded and reminds her of something he said 2 years ago. She should never be alone with a highly trained and powerful demon slayer. And as if on cue, a purple light begins to glow on both of their chests, signaling something unusual. Confused, she asks what he's planning. But he doesn't hesitate to respond, recalling how back then, he had traveled a long distance and was too exhausted, which allowed her dragon pattern to control and manipulate him. But now, things are different. Realizing the shift in power, she immediately moves to strike with her tail, warning him not to think he can escape using this trick. However, before her attack can land, he effortlessly blocks it with his hands. And to make things even more surprising, he firmly states that he never had any intention of running away in the first place. Without missing a beat, he grabs her tail and pushes her away, causing her to fall to the ground. Holding onto her tail, he looks at her with confidence, commenting on her helplessness. The dragon pattern, he explains, makes her tail extremely sensitive. And when it is pinched, she becomes as weak and powerless as a kitten being grabbed by the back of the neck. He smirks as he reveals that this is new knowledge he has gathered from her dragon book. Then, drawing his face closer to hers, he speaks once more. Dragons, he points out, always desire to conquer and control everything around them. But the real question is, has she ever experienced what it feels like to be conquered? Upon hearing this, her eyes widened in shock, completely caught off guard by his words. In the previous scene, we see Leon holding Rosweiss' tail, causing her to grunt in pain. She demands that he let go, but instead, he tightens his grip. Ever since he woke up, she has treated him like a mere plaything, trampling on his dignity without hesitation. However, tonight, he decides to turn the tables. When she realizes his intentions, she spins around in anger and calls him a name. Suddenly, the sound of voices at the door catches their attention. He turns his head and sees the maids standing there, whispering among themselves. One of them wonders aloud if the Queen's family bonding time has ended. As they step inside, the pair quickly hides. The maids enter the kitchen, oblivious to the two watching from the shadows. One picks up a plate and marvels at how clean and thin it is, questioning if the prince is responsible for it. Meanwhile, Leon keeps a firm hold on Rosweiss, placing a hand under her chin to keep her quiet. With a smug expression, he whispers about the Queen's usual high and mighty attitude and how amusing it is to see her in this position. She frowns at his words, but he tightens his grip, clearly enjoying the moment. Then, with a confident hum, he signals that it's time to begin. 3 days later, we find our male lead lying motionless on the bed, with his 2 daughters sitting beside him. Nguyen stares at him with concern, wondering if their father is actually dead since he hasn't woken up. Noah, on the other hand, remains unfazed, suggesting that they should simply wait and see. Without hesitation, she kicks him, prompting a groan of pain. With her arms folded, she casually remarks that he isn't dead yet. At this point, he barely recovered from the shock, questioning whether this is how a father should be treated. As he opens his eyes, his daughter lets out a joyful exclamation, thrilled that he is finally awake. She rushes to her mother and excitedly announces that he has regained consciousness. Still dazed, he sits up and wonders aloud when he faints. Without turning to face him completely, Rosweiss coolly asks if he needs a reminder. And just like that, the memory of that night returns to him. He remembers everything, the moment his strength gave out, the aftermath of his so-called dragon partner becoming completely useless, and the painful blow he received from her. Watching as she calmly arranges her hair, he can't help but think about how terrifying she truly is. If he were just an ordinary person, he would have met his end under her claws long ago. Yet, despite everything, he takes a closer look at her. For someone who has lived for over 200 years, she really is quite beautiful. He stands still, eyes locked on our female lead, completely lost in the moment. On the side, Muon and Noah watch him closely. Muon wonders why he isn't moving, while her sister glances at their mother and immediately understands. He's stunned. As Rosweiss leans down to pick up her hair clip, it slips from her fingers and falls to the ground. Before she can reach for it, he steps in, swiftly picking it up and carefully placing it back in her hair. He remarks that it suits her well, catching her by surprise. She didn't expect him to be so thoughtful, so she questions if he has done this for other women before. Instead of giving a straightforward answer, he folds his arms and explains that as a child, he often combed his master's donkey's hair, making him quite skilled at it. Muon suddenly appears from behind, curious about the unfamiliar word. He asks what a donkey is, and her dad, rather amused, raises 2 fingers on his head and explains that donkeys are similar to dragons, with 2 ears and a tail. He adds that they are stubborn and hum when unhappy, just like her mother. However, before he can react, she frowns and swiftly lands a hit on his stomach, making him exclaim in pain. Muon, seeing this, immediately rushes over, concerned. She asks if he is okay, and he assures her that he is fine. Meanwhile, Rosweiss, now folding her arms, announces that their task for the day is to learn how to write their names. She assigns the responsibility to their dad, who immediately protests, saying she gave him another task without his permission. Muon, on the other hand, is thrilled and eagerly looks forward to the lesson, while Noah confidently states that she already knows how to write. Without wasting time, Muon excitedly grabs her sister's hand and starts running toward the study room. She talks about finding a pen and picking nice colors, asking which one Noah prefers. Without hesitation, she chooses purple. Once the children are gone, she turns to Leon and informs him that her sister is coming to visit today. Without giving him a chance to respond, she states that she doesn't want him to appear in front of her. Leon, clearly not expecting this, questions why he isn't allowed to meet her family. Steps closer, lowering her voice as she places a finger on his chest. She tells him that as far as her family knows, he is a male dragon who married into the Silver Dragon clan. He was in a coma for 2 years due to an illness and has only recently woken up. If he ever has to meet her sister, he must stick to this identity. He listens to her carefully, then watches as she walks away through the door. However, in his mind, he has no intention of following her plan. Instead, he is already thinking of ways to embarrass her in front of her sister. At the Silver Dragon Castle Children's Study, Leon sits with his children, guiding them as they practice their writing. He carefully writes on a piece of paper, demonstrating the strokes they should follow. Once he finishes, he hands the papers to them and encourages them to copy what he has written. Noah looks at the paper, unimpressed, and compares it to what their mother wrote, making a remark that immediately catches his attention. Meanwhile, Muon examines hers, not particularly excited, and questions the purpose of the exercise. In response, he suddenly remembers that he forgot to give something to their mother. Without wasting any time, he stands up, waves at them, and assures them that he will return to check their progress later. As soon as he leaves, Noah comments on his behavior, questioning his intelligence, while Muon, despite trying to hide it, appears somewhat pleased. However, Noah quickly dismisses the moment and urges Muon to get to work. Outside, at the Silver Dragon Castle gate, Rosweiss' sister, Isha, the Red Dragon Queen, stands waiting. As soon as Rosweiss spots her, she rushes forward, embracing her warmly. Time has passed since their last meeting, and they exchange greetings, with Isha noting how much more radiant her sister looks. However, our female lead hesitates to agree, touching her chin in thought. Isha holds her hand and brings up her husband, expressing curiosity about why he is nowhere to be seen. She explains that he is feeling unwell and cannot meet her at the moment. In response, Isha expresses disappointment, mentioning her interest in seeing the Dragon King who took her sister away. She brings up the nature of dragon clan marriages, emphasizing how they are usually based on profit and alliances rather than love. However, considering how fast Roswise got married and had a child, she assumes that the relationship must be strong. Without hesitation, our female lead challenges the idea, questioning whether marriage and children truly indicate a good relationship. She firmly states that she has no attraction to her husband, neither now nor in the future. Isha, amused, smiles to herself, noting that her sister is just as tough as before. However, Roswise quickly shifts the mood, hugging her from behind and suggesting they take a walk in the garden to catch up. Not far from them, Leon watches their interaction through a special tool, taking an interest in Roswise's sister. As he observes, he smirks and decides to test how far the dragon pattern can reach. Meanwhile, as the two sisters walk, Isha brings up recent disturbances within the dragon clan, particularly mentioning the Red Flame Dragon King, Constantine. Roswise, surprised, questions the sudden mention of his name, recalling that he has not been seen for years. However, Isha, with her arms crossed, points out that no one truly knows what he is planning. Given his fiery temper, she assumes he might be looking for an opportunity to expand his territory. Previously, Roswise notices the strange glow of the tattoo on her chest. At this moment, she feels uneasy. Meanwhile, Isha folds her arms, turning back to look at her. She questions her with concern, but our female lead quickly covers the mark, insisting that nothing is wrong. Despite her words, her mind is racing. She knows exactly who is behind this, Leon. The thought of him makes her frustrated. Isha, not entirely convinced, decides to move on and begins walking away. She mentions the need to strengthen border defenses and informs her sister that Shinlong will be in contact if any new developments arise. However, something is off. A shiver runs through Roswise's body, and she realizes that the effect of the dragon pattern is growing stronger. If this continues, she knows she won't be able to handle it much longer. Isha suddenly turns back, noticing her flushed face. Concerned, she calls out, pointing out how red she looks. Still shivering, Roswise quickly comes up with an excuse. She remembers something urgent and insists she will return in 30 minutes. Without waiting for a response, she rushes off. Isha watches her leave, offering to accompany her, but she refuses. As our female lead disappears from sight, Isha touches her lips thoughtfully. She murmurs to herself, acknowledging how young people often play around with the power of the dragon pattern. Meanwhile, in another scene, our male lead is completely relaxed, lying back on a chair with his arms folded and legs crossed. A smug smile spreads across his face as he enjoys the moment. He is well aware of what he has done and is curious to see how long Roswise can endure. However, his amusement is short-lived. Suddenly, the door bursts open, and before he can react, she storms in, calling his name loudly. He stares in shock as she approaches aggressively, grabbing him by the shirt, accusing him of deliberately activating the dragon pattern at that moment to embarrass her in front of Isha. She glares at him with pure frustration. He knows he needs to act fast. Without hesitation, he puts on his most innocent expression, pretending not to understand what she is talking about. He feigns concern, asking if it is wrong to warn her. She, however, is not easily fooled. Without a second thought, she leaves his shirt, but the unexpected action makes her face turn bright red. At this moment, he silently celebrates. His plan is working, at least she finds him disgusting. Feeling a mix of frustration and embarrassment, she calls him shameless. She reminds him that he is a defeated prisoner and has no right to be talking so boldly. But deep down, she scolds herself. She came here to confront him, so why is she the one feeling overwhelmed instead? Trying to regain control of the situation, she warns him. He is lucky this time, but if he dares to do this again, she will not let him go so easily. With that, she turns around, walking away as quickly as possible. Yet, in her mind, she admits, she is scared. He watches her retreat, placing a finger on his chin in amusement. A single word was enough to make her so helpless. The dragon pattern truly holds immense power. But then, an unfamiliar feeling washes over him. As he recalls the look on her face, his heart starts pounding. Confused, he presses a hand against his chest, trying to make sense of it. Frustrated, he suddenly raises both hands to his head, telling himself to snap out of it. He has no time for this nonsense. The kids are still waiting for him. Back in the study room, the children grow restless. Nguyen, looking around impatiently, wonders why their father has not returned yet. If you're eager for the next chapter, drop a comment expressing your interest in a part 2. Don't forget to subscribe and hit the notification bell to stay updated. Until next time, ciao.